Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming on time. Much appreciated. My name is Mr. X Golani. That's my name. Welcome to the Mr. X Talks Careers. And we have our guest today, and she's already here. And she is Mrs. Joy Malete, and she is going to be with us as she takes us through a journey. So I need to start off as usual with the profile of who we have in our midst today. So it's not just enough to just talk about the fact that she's here. We need to know who she is as we take it up from there. So I'm going to read a profile very quickly, but very clearly as well, so that everyone knows who we are dealing with right now. So who do we have? Joy Malete is a CA, Chartered Accountant, South Africa, CIMA, on pending registration for CGMA, huge words, a qualified Chartered Accountant and seasoned financial professional with over 10 years working experience in the audit, financial services, and asset management industry. She is the SAICA 2020 Top 35 Under 35, and currently she's working as the Chief Financial Officer for Discovery Health Medical Scheme. Her previous experience includes working for a multinational organization, as well as the Director for Controllership, as well as a Senior Financial Manager for Stanlib, one of the leading asset management companies in South Africa. She serves as a non-executive director on the National Board of Meals on Wheels Community Service, which is a South African non-profit organization. And this is the person that we have today. Joy, welcome, and maybe say hi to the people that are here on this platform.
Thank you, Mr. X, and good evening to everyone joining us tonight.
All right, perfect. So what you'll do, you'll take us through your journey and your presentation, and we'll just be here. So what happens to everyone when she's done, that's when we can ask maybe questions, or even during the time when she's talking, you can always post your chat there. I'll note it. Then we have a discussion where you guys can ask questions and take it up from there. Joy, I will mute myself, disable my video. It's all up to you. God bless you and take care.
Awesome. So good evening, everyone. So I think I've already been introduced, but I don't think that necessarily gives you insight into who I am. And I think maybe it just makes it a lot more relatable if I start there. And just by just relaying a bit of my background before we get into the actual nitty-gritties of why we're here. So I think like any other person on this platform, and perhaps there is a person who can relate, I grew up, so I was born, obviously, and bred and raised in South Africa. So when I was born and as I grew up, I lived with both my parents. When I think I was 6 in grade 1. So generally what used to happen at home during school holidays, December school holidays, is that we would we would be not necessarily shipped, but we would all go to my grandparents' place in the Eastern Cape. And that's where we would gather as cousins. So what happened this particular one December, is that we as per usual, as per custom, we went to my grandparents' place. But when I came back home, my dad was not around. Okay, so I was 6. So my dad was not around. And obviously, like any other child, you'd ask your mother, where is your father? And like, I don't know if parents do this today, but my mother just, kept on saying, no, he's coming, he's coming. And, he's been coming literally from that day for like a couple of years. And I think we even moved house. We moved house and went to Spreadview, and my dad was still not around. And so I'm growing up and this person is absent. And at some point he resurfaced, and my dad came up. As a child, obviously, I think I was grown at that stage. Probably I was probably like 9 or so. So he had been, absent in my life for about 3 years, where I hadn't seen this person. So around 9-10 years, he reappears, and so we start trying to have a relationship, with this guy, who happens to be my father. And then, so as I'm trying to build this relationship with this person. 2 years down the line, my mother passes away. So you can imagine, so I'm 12 years old, my mother passes away, I'm about to start high school. Literally a few days before schools opened, I was turning 13 that year. And just a couple of days before the schools reopened, my mother passed away. So I spent the first 2-3 months of grade 8 not knowing where I was going to go for high school, because obviously, I mean, it had been 3 months before, you know, my mother passed away in Jan. So that meant I couldn't attend the first day of school. So I didn't attend the first day of school, and pretty much my space was taken at whichever school I was registered for. So for 3 months, I was literally, I did not know, you know, what was going to happen with my life at that point. And obviously there's family drama and things like that. I'm young, too young to participate in the family drama following my mom's death. So I get shipped to my brother's boarding school. He was in a boarding school in Heidelberg. So I get shipped to my brother's boarding school. And in the middle of the school term, disruptions happen at the school. And kids just decided to boycott the school grounds, to break buildings, and it was just chaos. Okay. So this is like towards the end of my grade 8 year. So pretty much I did not, you know, I pretty much discount grade 8. I feel like I did not do grade 8 properly. And so obviously then we spend the rest of the year out, you know, I'm not in school, and then I stay with my sister. My elder sister comes and she takes me in. She was probably like 30 at the time with 2 kids. So now you can imagine, I'm you know, in hindsight, as I look back, I see myself as, you know, at this age, and I think, you know, I'm not in a position to be mothering a teenager right at this age, at this point. So my sister takes us in. Obviously, it's a stressful event for her. She's just lost her mother. She's lost her husband. Her husband had passed away as well, same year. And so now she has to take care of these teenagers. And so she does her best, and she enrolls us at a school, Princess High School. So I go stay with my sister in Soweto. And as you can imagine, because of the stress, my sister's stressed out. I'm in grade 9, pretty much discounted grade 8. So now I'm having to catch up for both years, grade 8 and 9. And with all the stresses, obviously now it strains the relationship between me and my sister, because she's experiencing her own difficulties that she can't necessarily, you know, that she can't necessarily explain to us. But obviously they are impacting the way that she's relating to us. So, so that impact, obviously, it strains the relationship. And at some point I decide, okay, I need to, you know, find my father again. Not necessarily find him in a sense that he was missing, but just try and find my father again. And we need to reignite this relationship because things aren't working right now. So December holidays come, I speak to my father, and my father's like, okay, you need to come back. So literally I left my sister's place as a person going to visit, and there I was now having to establish a relationship with my father, and it's the 2 of us in the house. And now he has to make a plan for my grade 10. So now you can imagine this child who did not have like a balanced grade 8, 9, and now I'm having to choose subjects in grade 10, which was obviously like very complicated for me. So as a result, I went to grade 10 having chosen physical science, having chosen maths. I think that was mandatory at, you know, during my time. And then I chose accounting, and then I did business. Now you can imagine, so how does physics come into play here? Which is physics and chemistry combined, right? And at that time I thought, you know, to myself, maybe I'm going to become, you know, at some point, I'm going to become a chemical engineer. I think growing up, I used to be like, I think I used to be a smart kid. So I think that really helped along the line in terms of trying to bridge that gap when I, you know, given the background that you now know, that I pretty much missed grade 8, but for some reason managed to catch it up in grade 9, not with so great marks, because obviously I had missed, you know, parts of grade 8. But so now grade 10 was my time to now fully cement myself. So then I've now changed schools again. I am in Germiston High School. My dad is doing the best he can because he's trying to make up for lost time. He's trying to make up for the fact that I don't have a mother. He's trying to make up for the fact that, you know, things got tense with my sister. He's trying to make up for so many things. And so he's trying his level best. And I'm staying with this person who is near pension. Okay. And obviously he's not working a glorious job. My dad was like a delivery driver. You know, he was delivering flowers. He worked at Country Flowers. I don't know if they exist today, but he was literally delivering flowers. And so I've got my dad who is trying his best, making sure that I go to school. So he pulls the strings that he pulls at the school that I went to. And I managed to get an exemption. So in other words, you know, the exemption that is given to us kids who can't afford school fees. So I got that in high school. And so I managed to get through high school in that fashion. So I studied where I needed to study, but I wasn't that serious, to be honest with you guys. But I tried, and I think and what I realized was that being smart alone does not necessarily does not cut it. You know, there's something extra that is needed apart from being smart, which is hard work, that element of hard work. So I managed to literally, you know, just pass my not just pass my matric. I passed my matric well because I got my exemptions and things like that to be able to enter varsity and register, you know, for the course that I did, which was BCom accounting, which was not my first choice, by the way. My first choice before registering for BCom accounting was chemical engineering. But then chemistry showed me flames in matric, you know, so chemistry showed me flames in matric. And when I looked at my chemistry marks and I thought to myself, okay, if I'm really doing well in accounting, then maybe I need to just stick to the knitting. And so I took accounting thinking that I'll get to varsity and the only thing I'll do is accounting. And to my surprise, that was not the case. But that's besides the point. So I register for chemical engineering, I register for accounting, and I get obviously accepted. My end results just did not qualify me for the chemical. I suppose, you know, my base marks were really for the accounting degree. So I get taken and accepted. Yes, it's a danger. I agree with you, Kamogelo. But yeah, so I then register. So I'm accepted at university. And number one, remember my dad now is as a pensioner. So obviously he's on government pension. So now I'm the one running around because I want this education, right? So I'm running around, I'm going to UJ up and down, trying to find my way. I don't have any parent accompanying me there. It's literally me where people, other kids are walking around with their parents. I'm literally there by myself, running around looking for NSFAS offices because I had researched and I knew that, you know, I could study on a loan. There's NSFAS for kids like me. And so I look for NSFAS officers. I do what I need to do, take the forms home. My dad does what he needs to do, his part. And so it's that whole process. And eventually I get accepted. My final marks are fine. I get to start. I get to start in varsity. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is, you know, it's accounting. It's just literally going to be, you know, numbers. And to my surprise, there's a lot of theory in accounting. And so I do this course, which I'm going to get to now as we discuss, you know, what are the requirements for actually doing this course. But then fast forward to me then graduating. So I graduate and I then start my articles at Deloitte. I do my 3-year training with them, and then I qualify as a CA. And I'm like, okay, this is my breakthrough now, you know. And so I qualify as a chartered accountant, and then I start working. Oh, no, I don't start working. Sorry, I got married when I was in my second year of articles. So in my second year of articles, I got married, and then in my third year, or before I started working, I fell pregnant in my third year of articles. So this is after varsity. I was working, training, and then I fell pregnant in my last year of articles and gave birth literally just after I completed my article. So just beginning of the year, Feb, I gave birth. So that means I'm obviously already starting on a back foot, because not necessarily a back foot, not a bad thing. But after completing my articles, I was literally on maternity leave for about 6 months. So when the 5th month came, then I started like, I need to now find a job, because, okay, my daughter is now 5 months. And by the time she turns 6, I need to have secured that job, not knowing that it doesn't really come that easy. So I go to a couple of interviews and some epic fails and some learnings along the way, and eventually I make it for this asset management company. I start off and I'm a financial accountant there. There's like typical accounting work that is done there, as a financial accountant, which is passing journal entries, balancing books, and all those things that we are learning and we have to now apply, and all the theory that we were learning as we were going along. And then I've always tried to push. I've always tried to push myself, and I suppose it's and in hindsight, I think I thank God for the kind of energy I've always had, in a sense that I haven't been a complacent person. So despite my circumstances, I've always thought that, my realities were going to be different than my current circumstances. So I had to make sure that I control what the outcome of my reality would be, because I did not necessarily have control over my past, but whatever was to come in the future, I have full control over, because now I was an adult, I was over 18, and I had, full control over my choices and my, and my decisions and everything that was actually playing out in my life. And so I've always, tried to push beyond what was currently happening. So I remember that first year, because obviously you're coming into the job market and it's a narrow scope of what you're going to see. It's a narrow scope of what you're going to see. And then at some point, I think after about a year or so in my role, I felt like, okay, I'm not learning anything new anymore in this role. And I felt like for that particular function I was performing, I had reached the ceiling, And so I'm very outspoken as well, even in the workplace. So and then I have a discussion with one of my managers, and then I have a discussion with her boss to say that, listen, I feel like I've reached, the ceiling in terms of my learning capacity, that you give me more work to do so that I can at least grow in terms of what I'm doing. So for me, there had to be a trade-off. It was either, I'm sacrificing salary for learning, but, with the hope that my salary is going to increase in the future. And so all of these things. So eventually, so the year goes past, and we start discussing a plan around, okay, how are we going to expose you to a lot more things and things like that. And so that plan comes about. And later on, my manager decides to quit. This is probably me in the role for like about a year and a half. And my boss's boss then comes to me and says, okay, there's this opportunity that has come up, there's this financial manager role that has come up, and I know I'm going to be throwing in the deep end here, but are you willing to take, the chance, right? Remember, I've never managed people before, apart from supervising people during my training years. I know not much about people management. Now I have this team that I have to manage. And, obviously it's a new ball game because I'm exposed to, the scope has now increased. So then I'm saying, being, me, I say, what, I'm ready for the challenge. It's either I sink or swim here, and, sinking is not an option. So I need to stay afloat. My head needs to be above the water, like the entire time. And so I take on this challenge, and you won't believe that was a huge stepping stone for my career. Had I not taken that challenge, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So I took on that challenge head on, made the mistakes I made, but I had, very supportive people in the background, because when they hired me, they knew, okay, that when they hired me for that role, they knew that I did not have the necessary skill sets. But because I had the drive that I have, they wanted to take a chance, and luckily I did not disappoint. And that just led to just the growth that I've experienced in my career after that period. Then I grew in the role, and then I started managing bigger things, bigger portfolios. I started becoming trusted in the company as well, in terms of my knowledge and things like that. And at some points I felt, as well, once you start becoming the go-to person for a lot of things, then you start realizing that maybe it's time for you to learn new things, and maybe you need to also you know um make room for others to grow in the process. um and so I then moved, I changed jobs, and I worked at another company, the multinational company that we're talking about. And again, there, I was it was also an accounting, like a finance function role. And again, they just a lot of exposure coming in, you having learned so much because I've been immersed. I had touched so many things, at the company that I was at the asset management company that I was at. I touched so many things. So my knowledge now was like broad. And I think that's one thing that if there's anything I want to, I want you guys to take out of this, is that never discount a learning opportunity for salary, guys, because the money is going to come along the way. You don't, especially if there's room and opportunity for growth for you, don't ever look at this don't ever look at the salary as the most important thing, especially when you're starting out. As the make it as the it has to be market related. I'm not saying you have to be underpaid, but what I'm saying is that you need to balance that with the level of experience you're going to get in that role, because later on down the line, all that knowledge is going to count for something. So, and then I worked in this company, played my part, and at some point I felt, as I want to go back to like a South African based company, because that's where for me how I've aligned my growth, because I think as we go through these careers, we also have to have a plan, right, in mind. Where do I see myself going, and how do I see my growth paths, and is the company that I'm at really aligned to those growth paths, and is it really going to get me there? And at some point I figured, if I don't really want to immigrate at this point to different company, to different country within the company, then it doesn't make sense for me to stay here, because obviously there's a lot, there's quite a lot of dynamics that come into working with for multinational organizations. And for me, it was not necessarily the best place to be at. And and it just so happened at the right time that I got contacted for this particular role. And when I got contacted again, remember I told you, Mina, if they call me and it's a swim or sink kind of situation where I'm being thrown in the deep end, I'm definitely going to take it, and I'm going to try and keep my head above the water all the time. So this role comes, and I get told up front, listen, we know you don't have literally like the, all the qualifications, not qualifications. I do have the qualifications, but the level of experience that they're looking for this role. But, you've got the right attitude. You've got, looking at your career trajectory, you seem to be like a good potential candidate for this role. And so what happened was, okay, now at this role, I'm like, but no, this much it's too much of an overkill. But I said, you know what, listen, I've got nothing to lose. Let me give it my best shot. And to my surprise, my best shot actually landed me role. So here I am finding myself as the chief financial officer for this organization. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to, you feel like, okay, it's daunting because everything is new, I've never had to, immerse myself to that level of extent in a board meeting. I have never had to, so there were so many things that were new for me. I've never had to deal with a particular committee of the board that I look after or have to, so there were so many things that were new and so much that I had to learn for me to find myself where I am. And again, I took on that challenge, and I took on that challenge, and I thought to myself, again, I just need to keep my head above the water here. So these people know, and I think the best thing is knowing I think when you know your areas of development, I'm not going to call them weaknesses because we grow, right, as people. So when you know your areas of development and you know um, where you need to focus on, you sort of, at least you've mapped out what you need to learn along the way as you're trying to acquire this knowledge that will set you up, right? Because after some time, you're expected to play at a certain level. Even though the people who hired you knew at the time of hiring that there are certain things that you were lacking and they promised you certain things, but it's not long lived. After some time, you literally have to up your game and you need to play at that level. And so the reason why, I felt, let me rather start with my background as I relay the story, was so that I know I'm going to relate to someone, and to say that sometimes you see people and you think things, that things come easy to people, or people had a silver spoon in their mouth, and not realizing that it could be, it could be you, that it's actually possible for me as well, that I remember back in varsity, guys, I used to sit, when things were so difficult for me, I'd look at the people ahead of me, literally all the time. I'd look at the people ahead of me and I'd look at this person and analyze them. And I'm like, if this person can do it, so can I. What can be so difficult about this course that I can't do it? So each time I'd look at the person ahead of me, and they would literally give me motivation, because just by looking at them and looking at just their journey and how they got there, and the fact that they've actually succeeded in this current grade that I'm in, I'd be so motivated. And it would, that would tell me that, it's also possible for me, that I too can do it if I put in the amount of effort that is required for me to get to where I need to be at. And so it's really, guys, not rocket science. That's what I'm trying to say to us, is that if you set your mind to it, doesn't matter what challenges, what your background looks like. I didn't have a glorious background. I mean, you've heard my background. I did not have a glorious background, but I was determined that poverty was not my portion. And you just have to tell yourself that even though you are in the midst of it at that time, you just need to tell yourself that it's not your portion, and you need to try. And for me, and luckily, I think, even though my father resurfaced later on, but he prioritized education, and for him it was a way out of poverty for his child. And if he could really support me from an educational front, that's the only way that I could succeed in life. Basically, he's just going to be my support structure and system, and I just need to do what I need to do. And that was that was a blessing for me, even though I spent half of my years with him, making him pay for having not been there. But I think he tried his level best to try and be there for me. So maybe let's come back then to to why we're here, and why there's a possibility for each and, or, well, I suppose, people sitting in here who are thinking, I want to be a CA, but I do not know where to start, or this thing is just too far-fetched for me, and I just want to bring it a bit closer, closer to home, and to actually encourage you that it's not too far-fetched, especially if you are determined. That it's not too far-fetched, and it's something that can be achievable. So what I'm going to do now, though, is let me share my screen before we get to questions. Mr. Host, if you can please allow me to share my screen so that I can just share this, journey.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
How do I move it? There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
So it's literally, I've just summarized it into 4 easy steps. Well, not so easy, but easy steps. So the first step is that, the minimum requirements for university admission is a level 5 pass in maths, and this is pure maths. So I know, guys, bunzima, it's hard in the maths, in the maths corner, but it's worth it. Okay, so if you can just at least get your 60% in pure maths, and I know with Mr. X, you're probably gonna get more than 60. Let's get those level 5 passes in maths. And then you need to pass your national senior certificate with an exemption again. So those are, the minimum requirements. And then once you've got those minimum requirements, you then register, right, with a SAICA accredited university for a 3-year BCom accounting degree. And then following that, you are going to register for your postgraduate diploma in accounting or an honors equivalent. So I went to UJ. So we did an honors in BCom accounting, which was an equivalent of the postgraduate diploma, and it was called CTA. So that's what I did. So I did my 3 years, and then I did my honors, and then I moved, and then you do your 3-year training at a SAICA registered training office. So again, I'm like literally highlighting that it has to be SAICA accredited, it has to be SAICA registered. Otherwise, then obviously, I think you're just wasting time if you aren't going to like a SAICA accredited university for this degree. So you need to do your homework and do your research and just make sure you're going to the, to a right institution that will assist you into reaching that goal of yours of becoming a CASA. And then whilst you're training, during that 3-year training period, you are going to write 2 exams, which are called, your qualifying exams. The first one is the initial test of competence. And this, I think you're right, at the beginning of your first year of training. And then there's the assessment of professional competence. I think during my time, these weren't called these, so things have changed a bit. They have progressed because, again, the environment has changed quite slightly. So then you do your assessment of professional competence. This is, I think, towards the end of your second year. If, and you get another opportunity in your third year, if you don't come right. And so you do those 2 exams during your 3-year training. And once you complete all these things, you've trained, you've gotten all your hours, and then you get signed off by your training institution, and you are now set up. Now you're ready to hit, ready to go into the big world as a registered CSA. Once you get your designation with SAICA, which I believe, has the potential of opening so many doors for you. In business, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to be a leader in business, I think this is probably, one of the paths and the routes that I would definitely recommend to anyone who wants to really do well especially in the business field or the finance, field as you are coming out of university. So definitely recommend. And it's really, guys, it's hard work. Yes, it's 7 years at minimum. And literally the world is your oyster, guys. You got there, and yeah. Yeah, you are you. And I'm really happy at this point to maybe take a pause and then open up for questions, Mr. X, if you allow.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that one. Much appreciated. We are inspired by your resolute spirit, by the fact that you are a fighter, and the fact that you started off with the background just like yours, and then someone can identify. I think that's one of the things that you said. And Ukuku says, yes, an inspiring story. And thank you so much for that. Okay, now on the platform, you are allowed to interact with our speaker for today. She's the Chief Financial Officer, so that just in case you missed this out, Chief Financial Officer, not just a financial officer, chief one, right? Financial Officer at Discovery Medical Scheme, one of the biggest companies that we have here in South Africa. Dr. Malvin says, determination, wit, and courage. We love such stories of not feeling sorry for yourself under tough conditions. Now let's talk. People can be allowed to send messages here. You can lift up your hand through the platform and can be able also to say something or ask something. And please do not be afraid. I'll read some of your questions and all that. Someone says, would you ever go back to pursue chemical engineering?
Listen, I'm happy where I am, guys. I don't know why I wanted to be a chemical engineer, but I was born to be an accountant.
You can say that again. Ukamukhelo says, you know where the danger is. That's where the danger is, right? Let me read a question from Tyrese. Says, you've mentioned that you're also done with SEMA. Is it possible to do SAICA from SEMA? And if so, are there any exemptions on that? Okay, take that through.
Yes, definitely. I mean, just like how you would do it vice versa. I think when I did my SEMA, I was credited for, I think, 3 of the levels. I was credited for level 1, 2, and 3. And the only thing I had to do was the last level. And literally I had to write just the strategic exam after, going through obviously the theory. And yeah, and when you're doing it vice versa, there is a requirement to, so psycho does allow it. I think that the requirements are on the psycho website, but you do still have to write those 2 qualifying exams. I think those are some of the requirements that you would need to do. But if you do have, I think if you've got the relevant training experience, they might credit you from that front as well. But the exams you are still required to write.
Yeah, okay. I hope
So,
that
it is possible.
yeah, I hope that Tyrese was answered on that one. What's interesting about this conversation, Joy, is we have students here, matriculants, we have people that are already in a career, we have people that are halfway through adversity and stuff like that. And the fact that you spoke about the importance of knowing what you want to do and the growth that one needs in a certain career. At one particular point, you knew as much as you needed to know, saturation point, and you wanted to take another challenge. And you said that taking that challenge was the game changer, right? Taking
Yes.
that very challenge was the game changer for anything. I think that's very important to all of us here, to say, whatever career you may choose, whether you're still at high school, you're at varsity, post varsity, at work, or whatever. I think whenever a challenge comes through, take it. I think we grow more in uncomfortable conditions than in the comfortable conditions. Someone says, yeah, what does a day in the job of the chief financial officer look like?
Yo.
I thought you'd touch on that.
Let me touch on it now.
Good.
So guys, let me tell you. So I was communicating with Mta today. I think he's trying to sort out and make sure that I'm sitting in the middle of call it a strat session with one of our, service providers, call it that. And I'm thinking to myself, so just today, after this call, there's a pack that I need to make sure goes out, right? Because I still need to do the exec summaries. Although the pack is done for me, I still need to write the executive summaries. And so you go in there and most of your days are filled with meetings. So that means you have to sort of block out your diary for actual work, because you still need to do some work, although you sit in meetings most of the time, but you actually do have to do some work. And so most of my days would be filled with meetings. I do have certain blockers in my diary where literally, you can't put in a meeting during that time because it's my focus time. And yeah, so if it's not, so it would be sitting in either finance committee meetings because remember at a CFO level, you are sort of more in an oversight role. Because remember, you still have a team that does the actual work. So you are more you also play at a very higher level, but you still have to have the right knowledge as you interpret the data to understand and to pick up certain errors and issues in the data and to really understand what's happening in the numbers. Because someone might come up, literally you'd be sitting in a meeting or in a board meeting or whatever, and you get asked a question, and for some reason you're expected to at least know, even if the ballpark figures, where we're sitting at, in terms of some of the revenue numbers, or where we're sitting at in terms of some of the numbers, whatever numbers are, and in things that touch on financial risk, so things that might expose the company to, some risk from a finance perspective. And generally how I used to, describe, a finance function in an organization is that in most instances, apart from obviously, as you move higher, you also play at a strategic level. But generally, as you start out, you might feel really underappreciated in finance, because, business is always looking out for, the people that actually bring in the money. So if you are working in finance and compared to someone who's working in sales, you might actually think that you're undervalued. But how I changed my mindset towards that was actually looking at, if I was not here, what could go wrong, right? Because then that gives a lot of meaning to your role and to your function and to what you're doing. Because literally, if you did not do what you are doing right, that's the license of the business to operate gone, right? Because I mean, we look at, I'm gonna mention public, stories like Steinhoff. How did Steinhoff go down? It's all centered around finance, right? And things like that. So a company could literally go down because of wrong accounting. A company could literally go down because of issues in accounting, because that's how you report is your ticket and license to operate, because people rely on that information. And so that's where your value, you might not be bringing in the revenue, but you add so much value to the business in terms of making sure that they still maintain that license to operate. So that's generally mostly what you would be doing, is being the goalkeeper, making sure that you guys don't score own goals. And by making sure that you identify those financial risks in time, making sure that you are alerting, I mean, you'd sit in meetings and you're literally looking for, you're asking what could go wrong if this number were to shift this way. What is the impact for us? If this would move that way, what does it mean for the business? So you're there to literally apply your mind in that way, as opposed to actually doing the actual, day-to-day crunching of the numbers, but you play at a different level now, as opposed to being the actual doer of the work. But making sure that you at least, and that whole training makes sure, the rigorous training that we go through as accounting professionals makes sure that you can operate, at a capacity where you've got that professional skepticism that you are going to need and apply in these roles, that you are geared to asking the right questions. And not that all the questions you're going to ask are going to be deemed as right, but you are going to ask a lot of questions, and it's a growth path. I'm still learning to date, I'm still learning, I'm still growing as well. But it's all about, making sure, I suppose I'm meeting out. I'm meted out. I'm zoomed out. I'm meted out. But it's, you just experience a lot of meetings. I think there's just generally a lot of meetings, but that's because of the function itself. You just need to obviously be sitting around the room and making sure that you guys are, you are all on the same page, whether it's someone who is from the legal perspective, from the finance perspective, making sure that from the operations perspective, making sure from a business perspective, making sure that there's alignment. The business can't want to do something that might be contrary to what is required from an accounting standard perspective, or how do we bridge the gap from that perspective? So that's where you bring in your insight, to say, okay, because you don't want to impede business progress, but how do we make sure that whatever it is and what processes that we bring in place, then make sure that we are aligned and we can still meet that regulatory scrutiny if it comes at us. And that's where you also get your legal people. So it becomes this whole body that has to work together, but bringing different expertise onto the table into making sure, and that's what drives business forward.
Oh, thank you so much for that one. You know what? I don't know if you understand or know how phenomenal you are. You're a beautiful South African story. You could have gone to work overseas and all that, but you decided to stay in the country. And when I was talking to you during the day, I mentioned that, the fact that you're a Black woman in a country like ours, in an age and era like ours, some girl here on the platform is looking at you and being inspired. You said adversity. Part of your inspiration to keep moving was looking at others. Now look at you, people looking at you now, to say, okay, if she can make it and she's in the big, big, big parts of things, I'm here, I'm struggling with maths, I'm struggling with physics, I'm struggling with accounting, I'm struggling with career choices, I'm struggling with, downward mobility, I'm not growing.
Life.
Life in general,
in general.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, life in general. And here you are, and you are so focused, and you have that story going on with you, and that's such a beautiful thing to have. So you mentioned that you were in the Sakai top 35 under 35. Take us through Sakai, what do I say?
Saika, South African Institute of Chartered Accountants.
Okay.
Yes.
Take us through that.
So
what is it about?
Listen, so this is literally, I'll call it a competition, right? That looks, I'll say the cream of the crop, you know, for accountants in that age group under 35, you know, because it's a rigorous process that SAICA looks into. It's literally looking at difference makers and, you know, in CAs who are difference makers, you know, and call it people who excel, you know, in their careers, in their communities. So it's very holistic because it does not just focus on what you do at work, but it also focuses on what you do outside of work, you know, as a holistic CA. And and so there were thousands of entries in my year, and again, it was something that was daunting. But guys, you know, I always have this thing in mind. You know, when I make assessments, I always look at what do I have to lose. You know, I've got nothing to lose. Even if I don't make the cut, it's fine. I've got nothing to lose here, but everything to gain if I do make the cut. So it's always, you know, having a very optimistic view of life. You know, although there's a lot of negativity around us, but we shouldn't let the negativity sort of, you know, impact how we view our lives, right? There might be a lot of negativity happening around us, but don't let that negativity impact how you view your life. And so when I entered that competition again, it was just one of those, ah, man, I've got nothing to lose, but I've got everything to gain should it come through for me, you know, because again, it's going to be another stepping stone for me. So I entered, and, you know, when I received the news, and I remember I was in a bad space at that time, but when I received the news, bro, I can tell you now, I don't know, the level of confidence it gave me in what I do, what I've done, you know, and just my journey as a whole. I felt like it was that stamp of approval to say, you know what, you're on the right path, you know, no matter whatever, you know, no matter the circumstances or what challenges you've experienced along the way, all of these were worth it. And so just keep going and just keep doing what you're doing. So that's really what it was. Thousands of entries come through, and out of all those entries, they just select like 35, you know, top out of those entries. And that's how you become the top 35 under 35.
Top 35 under 35. I like the sound of that. You know, as we glide towards the end, you mentioned the role of parents, support, a support structure in the life of your in your academic life. And here we are, we come from different backgrounds, maybe with different situations. And that's something that as parents, and I know you're a parent now, you're a married woman, you have all these different things happening in your life. Hence, Tulisile asked, how do you manage your time? Because I know also you are a gym fanatic. I know that, right? And so how do you, sometimes I see you posting your stuff, I'm like, when does she go to work? This one, you know? So this whole mixed masala thing of life and all that, that's something that you're managing. And one of the questions, how do you manage it? But I think, again, while you're going to answer that, let's talk again about the role of support, a good support structure, and how we can, as a community of not just Black people, but as a community of people that are trying to make their lives better, how we can enforce that one to another. And what does a student who is about to write matric in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, what do they need? What kind of advice would you give to them, and all that? So that's something that maybe you can try and take us through. I know it's a lot, but please do.
It's packed. Your question is very packed, but I think, you know, I can never discount, you know, the impact that a support structure has. And sometimes it might not necessarily come directly from your parents, you know, which, you know, in most instances is very sad. But it plays a very, just, you know, if you come home and you know that when you are writing exams, you know, at least you are given that leeway from cooking, just that, you know, just, I'm not saying someone must carry you, but just some of the leeway that you get from some of your house chores, because there's an understanding in the household that you are writing your exams. That for me is part of support. So don't think of it as, you know, you want your parents to be, because we, like we said, I mean, and we're coming from, and especially us, man, you know, Black people, is that we do sometimes have those disadvantages, which is something that we are trying to change with our children, is that we don't really get asked those questions. So how's school? How are you doing here? It's like you just have to breeze through life and you need to figure it out yourself and things like that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes it's sort of, it helps us become who we are, but also learning from that, as opposed to repeating the same cycle to your children and trying to balance things out, you know, with your children as you grow older. But if you do have that support, I think count it as a blessing at home, you know. If you don't, look at other ways or other means where you are going to get, you know, that support, be it the likes of Abo Mr. X, who encourage you guys, you know, during that exam time. That is support. Someone who looks at you and says, it's possible. You know, that's the kind of motivation that we need, to say, "Nyazi kunzima, but it's worth it at the end." And just holding on, guys. I think it's just that whole mentality of not giving up. I mean, if you've gotten this far, why would you give up at this point? You know, you've pushed through, and you've, you know, pushed through high school, and now at this very last moment, you know, of your high school life, you decide to give up. It's too, like, I just feel like you've gone too far for you to give up. And that's just how you have to look at it. Even when you get to your first year, and if you think this is not, this, you know, this is not really for me, or you want to give up because of whatever reasons, just look back. I mean, I've gone through high school. Was that, you know, all in vain? Was that for nothing? And as you go through, you always look back and say, was everything that I've done to date for nothing? It surely shouldn't count for nothing. You know, it should count for everything. And that's what should keep you going. And that motivation, you know, sometimes we need self-motivation. Sometimes the motivation shouldn't come from out. Sometimes you just need to look at you and how, you know, where you come from and how far you've made it. And just say, you know, listen, Letogusha, I'm just picking on Letogusha Ngomo because I'm seeing her name here. You know, that Letogusha has come this far to actually give up. So I'm not going to give up now. You know, Ulumi, Sibego can also say the same thing. You know, I've come this far, guys. It might be, you know, it might be really difficult. I might feel like I'm not going to make it. But listen, it's possible. Like, listen, it's doable. If our Joy can do it, this is not rocket science. You know, if human beings can do it, I'm a human being. I've got brains. I'm going to do it. It's you know, it takes longer for others than it does for others. But that means I told you guys, smartness alone does not cut it. Remember, I told you, I said smart, when I opened up, I said smartness alone does not cut it. So what that means is that even if I'm not really the smartest of the smart, but if I put in the effort and I work hard, that is enough. So it's just making sure that you understand that balance, that if I'm going to put in the effort and the work, it has to pay off, you know, at some point. It has to count for something. And so don't give up because you think you know, it's a bit difficult. If you need to put in extra time compared to Udigeledi, make sure you put in that extra time, you know, because our brains don't work the same. And again, for some of us to grasp concepts, it takes longer than it does for others. So even if you're feeling behind in that one lesson in the class, it's not the end of the world. It means you just need a bit more time until you grasp that concept. So allow yourselves that bit more time, you know, give yourself that opportunity until you're able to then move with the pack. But the fact that you are slightly behind the pack doesn't mean you're not smart enough or you won't make the cut. It just means you just need to, you know, run a bit longer, you know, and just put in a bit more time and effort, and it should make the cut for you.
Mm.
And then the other part of the question was, how do I manage my time? And
Yes.
like I said, guys, I sleep very late sometimes, but I try, would say I don't, you know, I don't cross nights all the time. But I try and fit in some of the things I enjoy, which is my way of distressing because I can't always be working. So again, I do the gym for that. That's my me time. You know, where everyone, because I've got family time, I've got this, that's the time I dedicate to myself. So I give myself that time, which distresses me and it helps me, you know, it helps me get into the groove of things so that I'm not agitated. I'm not, you know, so I use that time to go to the gym. Unfortunately, today I couldn't because I had a late meeting, which literally ended, you know, just before 5:30. So I had a 5 o'clock session, but I couldn't really attend it. So yeah, that's basically how I manage my time. Does it work all the time? No, not necessarily the way I want it to work, but that's what I call, you know, that's the balance I'm trying to make out. I have to fit in family, I have to fit in work and my personal time. So that's generally how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, powerful. All right, thank you for that one. So yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. The way you were just explaining how important it is to keep moving. We will finish the journey. I think the idea is to get to the finishing line. If you run a marathon, you would know that there's always going to be a number one, number two, and the last guy. But the last guy and the first guy have both run the same distance.
Finished.
Yeah, we all finished it. The time may be different, but we did all finish it. I think it's the reality for the young person, because we live in a generation which is ultra competitive, Joy. People want things now, you know, and when you're not getting things now, it may look like you're the failure amongst like the group, you know. A 23-year-old has now a degree and a master's, and you're still struggling with matric. A 35-year-old has this and that, you know, all those different facets of life that we face. And I think that's a very important thing to learn and to understand. Let me give just two more questions here. So here's one interesting one from Nomsa. Uti, do CFOs get trained on distancing themselves from the ordinary employee? How far do you mingle or relate with ordinary staff? What do you guys do at work? You know, Joy?
Hi, guys. No one is trained to distance themselves from people. Because I know you guys don't love mistakes, because I know you guys are going to get there at those levels. Okay. This is what I want you guys, this is what I'm asking you guys to do, is that when you do get at that level, or when you do get to that level, see, I didn't say if you, I said when you get to those levels, okay, remember that you are human first, and you need to relate to the next person as a human. And that's the bridging gap. Nothing should separate you, because the fact that you are human and they're human, that's the first layer of relation, and that's where you relate with people. The CFO is a title. And so you can't distance yourself from people merely because of a title, because you are all humans. And when you guys get there, never forget that no matter how highly you think of yourself, never forget the fact that you are human first. And so you need to relate to other human beings at that level. So there's no training, unfortunately, that says no, but bosses already stand out in an average crowd, and although they stay humble. And I suppose it's because, again, guys, as you go through, it's just the level of confidence that you also gain, because now you're so confident about what you do, and because obviously, I suppose, because of your level as well, you know, you're not scared of raising certain views, you know, that an ordinary staff member might necessarily be scared of raising. But again, I think that the reason for the gap is just the experience, guys. Come on. When you also get to that level, you'll feel, as you grow in your career, you'll feel that you become a lot more comfortable around raising your views in a crowd, and being a lot more confident. And because your answers are obviously because you're trained, remember, experience, because you are more experienced compared to the others, you start also thinking differently and applying yourself differently. And so that comes across when you answer stuff, you know. I mean, I still have people above me who still respond differently, and you sit there and you actually think, I actually didn't think about that, you know. But it's, for me, I discount that to the experience, because once you run that mileage, you also get that opportunity to gain that experience, and you'll see that you start applying yourself differently. Just like now, guys, you're in matric, you don't apply yourself the same way that you applied yourself in grade 8, right? Because you've grown over time. That experience you've grown through that experience. So that's just generally how life works, even in your career. It's the same way.
Pretty much. Thank you so much, yeah, for that one. So experience and growth, and I think growth is the only constant that we should be having in this life. So whatever circumstance that you find yourself in, whether you're in matric or at varsity, after varsity, working, thinking of changing your career, whatever the case could be, the Chief Financial Officer of Discovery Medical Scheme has spoken to us and has laid down a journey, and also how we also can learn quite a lot from that one. Powerful Black woman, always making the moves. Don't be afraid when you see her on TV, right? Don't be afraid when you see her on bigger platforms and all that. I think the humility that comes with all of this is quite a very important thing, you know. With growth should come humility. And I think it's a privilege that we have this information. Now, go back to our first session, Joy. When we had Dr. Malvin, one of the things that he said was he wishes the time when he was young, 18, 17, that someone would say to him what he was saying to the kids then.
Yes.
You wish you had been told that, listen, man, this is the information. All right, you want to turn left, you do this, on a turn right. I think one of the people asked Yokolo says, do I get maths lead for chartered accountant? I say, definitely no. You're informed, right? By the time you get to grade 12, you know what you're talking about. Because a lot of bad decisions made in grade 8, made in grade 9, find their fruition in grade 12, and sometimes a bit too late to try and rectify that. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us. That's why one person said, thank you so, so much for this message that you've given unto us. All right, let's have you giving us the deliverables here, just to round it up and just bring it up there. Okay, someone just sent something here quickly. Says, can you please speak about the importance of to build a healthy ecosystem within your industry, building a healthy network of professional friends within your workspace, the importance of cultivating those interpersonal skills. All right. So in part of your deliverables, you come to something like that. So what is the importance of having those relationships that we have? And I must say, the fact that we have this for free must speak something about me and relationships.
and your networks.
And my network, my network of friends like you. Take us through on that one.
Exactly. I mean, as it goes nowadays, they say your network is your net worth, right? And I think it's just being able to make sure that you build those relationships with people, and in most instances, sometimes people not necessarily in your at your level, right? You always want someone who is going to be to whom you are going to feed off from, right, in most instances. So just make sure that you surround yourself in your circles. I'm not saying your circles, your immediate friends, but I'm talking about in terms of when you are looking for, because again, we think that if I'm looking for a mentor, I need to approach that person and say, Mr. X, please mentor me. But just having a conversation with Mr. X and picking up whatever you want to pick up from Mr. X, and then going to Mr. Nkomo, to Dr. Nkomo, by the way, and going to Dr. Nkomo and introducing yourself and picking up what you're picking up from Dr. Nkomo, because again, it's understanding that these people might not necessarily always have the time, but when you start, get mingling with people, people of that sort who know what you want to do, who know where you are trying to get to, and things like that. Guys, they say you don't know what gets spoken in your absence, by those people in the rooms they are in. So it's just making sure that you expose yourself as much as you can. And again, guys, I live by the fact that whatever I'm doing, if I've got nothing to lose, I've got nothing to lose, but everything to gain. So it's just making sure that expose yourself. You've got nothing to, because remember, you're already starting from a zero base at that point. You've got nothing to lose. You're just exposing yourself. If they reject you, okay, so you stay at that level. But if they accept you, you've got everything to gain, right? And again, when you rebase, when you're at that level, you rebase again to level 0, you try again for something else. You really have nothing to lose, but everything to gain. So just don't discount some of those networks that you can have with people around you. People, like, you can literally say, Dr. Nkomo, do you know someone who, then they connect you. Those connections work, guys. Connections work. And I think we know that.
Yeah.
We've seen that. We've seen that work, but they really do work. And I'm not saying corrupt connections. I'm just talking about generally connections, because again, when something comes up, I remember that, oh, actually, I had a conversation with Nomusa, this one time, and she wanted this and this and this, and I've got exposure to this. So I'm able to say, listen, I can give you ama context Muntu, they are looking, for something along these lines, and da 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 da. So that's how you just make sure that you stay at the top of people's minds. Sorry about that. But you make sure that you stay at the top of people's minds so that you are rememberable. Just make sure that you are memorable, and they can remember you quite quickly. But yeah, that's I think that would be it for me. But I think for my parting shots, guys, you've made it this far. Nothing is impossible, guys. Literally, not even the sky is the limits. Just think beyond the sky. Not even your background, says anything about where you're going. So don't even look at your background and think you don't deserve it. You might have made mistakes, in your past, but the past is the past. It's called the past for a reason, because we can't go back to it. So we just need to look forward now, look at the future, focus at the future, focus at what you can change, which is the future. The past you can't. Focus on what you can change and put your energies towards that, and just go for the kill. Literally go for the kill. Aim high, high up there, guys, and make sure you fall on the clouds if you do fall, and that you land on the clouds, but literally beyond the sky is the limit. But yeah, I wish you guys all the best. Those who are writing matric, I wish you all the best. And it's never too late, guys. If you feel like it's not the right course for those in varsity, whatever course you're doing, it's never too late to change. Again, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you are not competing with anyone. You are literally competing with yourself. So just make sure that you are just focusing on your journey. And even if you fall 1,000 times, because it's just you that you are competing with, you will still get there number one, because you are competing against yourself. So it doesn't matter how many times you fall, just pick yourself up again and just keep it moving, just keep going. And the direction should only be forward and never backwards. And yeah, so all the best. And I wish you guys all the luck in the world. And I'm hoping that I will be connecting with you guys soon. I'll be getting those LinkedIn requests and I'll be accepting them. And I shall be connecting with you guys and tracking your journey and tracking how you guys are doing and making sure that you guys honestly make it. And that's really my wish for everyone on this platform, just listening here, that you really attain what you've set your hearts to achieving. And yeah, those are my parting shots, just words of encouragement, and just to let you know that it's possible for you, Black child. You can definitely do it. And brown, green, white, whatever, yellow child, but you can do it.
Yeah, thank you. With that, I think that comes to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much, Joy, for that one. It's possible. And I think maybe some would like, maybe if you want to put in your LinkedIn handle there so people can know and maybe check it out there. Yeah, that would be quite helpful. Kuku says Siabonga, and I think that's what everyone has to say. You can always type in a thank you message there. There you are. Thank you so much for telling and retelling your story. Love it, from Dr. Malvin. There is the handle, Joy Malete CA. Love that. Chartered accountant right here in South Africa. All right. So with that, we thank everyone for coming. We're going to have another one next week. Just check the Mr. X, Mr. X Math Science Instagram handle, right? I'll put it across as well. People are saying, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. Your network is your net worth. Nazo. And then you got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose, but everything to gain. Those are the words that we're going to be going around with. Yeah. So please do check my Instagram page. I should be able to upload this, the next presentation that we're going to have. We're going to have this for the next coming 3 or 4 Wednesdays so that everyone can be inspired. Maybe my last announcement would be this. Mrs. Joyce talked about the fact that we need to know the requirements for whatever we need to do, which is chartered accountants, which was math. This was our presenter for today. And Mr. X, what does he deal with? He deals with mathematics, he deals with physical science, so that you can be a chartered accountant of note and be the next chief financial officer of Discovery Medical Scheme. All right, so I'm going to be hosting massive revision classes that are going to take place on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of November for mathematics, 8, 9, 10 for physical science, 8 hours a day. And we're going to be tackling high flyer questions, 3 days, 8 hours a day, face-to-face, focusing on questions with a lot of marks, like what Joy was saying. There's a lot that you need to put in, focusing on the most challenging topics, exam tips, time management, intense assessments, and feedback from Mr. X, a recognized and powerful tutor of note. Am I just beating my own drum? Yo.
That's what's required.
That's what's required, eh? So if you want to know more about this, please do check me out. I'm going to be they're going to be in Johannesburg, unfortunately, for those that are outside Jozi, though I'll have some online ones as well. I just put my number right there, 073-974-8498. Thank you so much for joining today. This particular presentation will be uploaded on my YouTube channel, which is Mr. X Mathematics and Science, grade 12. Mr. X, Mathematics and Science, grade 12, and you guys can have access to it. Otherwise, thank you so much, Joy, and may you have a great evening. Everybody, check it out next week. I'm going to close off this session here. Goodbye and good night.